At the age of 23, I was studying engineering in a small town in California. Studying took up all my energy and time from my personal life. I didn't care much about it. There were only a few girls at the university, and they did not attract my attention. Very where they were not beautiful, and my male desire did not play in me. One autumn evening, I went to the hairdresser's. There was no one there except bored Aunt Mia, who was leafing through a women's magazine. "And you are Alexander?" she said. "The usual." She knew me by name as a regular customer who steadily came in for a haircut once every 2 weeks. "My hair grows fast, what can you do?" "You need a woman," Aunt Mia declared. I was surprised. "What makes you think I don't have one?" "You keep ordering haircuts that no girl would put up with. Your voice trembles. You look away when I look at you." "It's clear you're alone," she said. I shuddered. Yes, she looked very attractive in her 40s. She was a little full, but well-proportioned. Young girls would envy her. I'm not staring. "I'm just surprised that such an attractive woman is still single," I said. "Guess it wasn't fate," she sighed. We talked for a long time. She told me about her life, her dreams, and expectations. I was fascinated by her stories. She was a very intelligent and interesting woman. When I left the hair salon, I felt like a different person. I realized that I needed a woman who would love and support me. I started looking for her, and after a while I got lucky. I met a beautiful woman who became my wife. I realize now that Aunt Maya was right. I really needed a woman. She filled my life with meaning and made me a happy man. In a trembling voice, I answered and looked down. "Oh, come on. I know how hard it is without a beautiful woman." "Oh." She sighed languidly and rolled her eyes. "You have to teach young people everything." She suddenly pulled the hairdresser's blanket off me, grabbed my hand and pressed the brush against hers. "Do you like it?" She smiled evasively and shook the brush against her. "Like it?" She smiled wryly and, without waiting for an answer, rested her knee on my stomach. For a moment, I thought I'd done something wrong, but she simply walked to the door, clicked the lock, and lowered the blinds. We were left alone in the semi-darkness. Not even young, 18-year-old female students are capable of repeating such a thing. When I closed the door behind me, I only dropped the word, "Thank you." I don't know how appropriate it was in this situation, but I just wanted to say it. After all, she had given me confidence and experience. A couple days after these events, her brother died. She went to Chicago and stayed there to live in his apartment. I haven't seen her since. But it is thanks to her that now I can communicate not just with girls, but with real beauties. Thank you, Aunt Mia. Another story from my life? Don't get distracted, sweetheart. I'll call you tonight. Jackson sent an air kiss to the cell phone screen and smiled. How could one think that he, a bearded man weighing 120 kilograms, was so sentimental? All over the cab of the truck were pictures of children. He was humbled by their drawings, their fake ones, their voiceovers. On a voyage, he tried to load himself up with work as much as possible, trying to think less about home. But sometimes, if there was a chance to get to a good store, he, with a longing in his chest, wandered through the halls, looking for gifts for them. How quickly they grow up, and he is far away. Each time he came back, he met more and more grown-up children. How much he was missing out, hoping to provide them with a carefree childhood. But the money was good, the kind you can't make in their town. He'd met Elise when he'd finally decided he wasn't going to start a family. He couldn't make it work, no matter how hard he tried. And he'd met some nice girls, but it wasn't the same. His mother often sighed, hinting at grandchildren, and once even ran to a fortune teller. What was it that struck the hardened bachelor? I don't know. When she, laughing, said that she had 2 children, he did not believe. Stylish, bright, well-groomed, and 2 children. He looked at her, talked to her as a friend, texted, and called her. She attracted, intrigued, made him dream. On his next visit, Jackson got up the courage to ask her out on a date. Exactly on a date, not just a chat, and she reopened before him from another side, tender, vulnerable, sensitive. He knew that her ex-husband had been imprisoned on a heavy charge. There was no alimony because the girl had deprived the father of parental rights. Then he wondered, why? That's their father. It's not their father. A father would think twice before getting involved in something like this. And the court took your side? Yes. And he didn't even write to them. The subject was closed. He became involved in their family's life, becoming more and more attached. He quietly started bringing gifts for the children, and then he didn't even realize he was living with them. After the woman became pregnant, he did not doubt for a second. Weddings played modest, just signed. After all, it was necessary to repair her apartment. It is not the case to live in such conditions. His apartment decided to rent while saving money for the account of the common child. Sometimes they joked that they had no time to fight, and so rarely still waste their emotions on nerves and clarification of relations. For almost 10 years of marriage, they had several serious clashes, but thanks to the worldly wisdom of his wife, they safely passed the crises. And now there was no sign of trouble. They chatted. The man calmly began to prepare dinner, and then again called his wife, "Honey, something laptop hangs. Do you know what could be wrong?" "I don't know. Maybe it needs to be cleaned." "How?" Sometimes he was amused by her childlike defenselessness and directness. Although she worked as an economist, she didn't know anything about technology. Sometimes, Jackson laughingly imagined the programmers at work torturing her. He connected remotely to her laptop, clicking through programs. He wasn't an expert himself, but he didn't want to admit his helplessness. Machine clicking all over the place, he came across the astrologer file. Wow, his wife was into astrology. This was already interesting, and he pressed play, not realizing that it would completely change his life. For almost 2 hours, he listened to the recording, gradually coming to shock. His wife was in an online counseling session, so all he saw was the astrologer. The recording for what? Probably a demand from someone involved. The pretty woman first talked at length at the influence of the planets, some karmic debts. He sometimes laughed, listening to this nonsense, having dinner and wondering whether to forbid the spouse to suffer such nonsense. But then the woman started a topic about banns, about the relationship with her husband, and asked his date of birth, and she said, "It is the husband." It was visible that the woman slightly did not understand the answer. After all, his spouse was closer to 40 years old. And even despite constant trips to the beautician, the age could be easily read. The astrologer interrogated, "Did you say the date of birth of your son?" Jackson froze without bringing the bread to his mouth. Now the counseling was getting more interesting. The wife's children were 15 and 17, and the shared daughter was 9. And he remembered exactly when their birthdays were. His heart thumped in his chest and froze. Time stretched agonizingly slow. And then his beloved wife answered, "This is my friend." "Friend, understand? I don't know what to do. I have 3 children, a loving husband, and I'm torn. He's always away. He doesn't pay attention to me. I met Michael, who's 22 years old, by accident. You know, with him I felt like a woman, and he calls me to marry. And I would like to consult with you about what I should do." Now Jackson was watching the tape with a detached look. It seemed to him that it was just someone else's movie. He could not see his wife's face, but he could see the expression on the astrologer's face. It was obvious that she was uncomfortable with the whole thing, and she grimaced and asked again for her husband's date of birth. "You know, your spouse has an open fertility planet." "Meaning?" "Meaning that if you divorce, he'll still have children." "You don't." "Yeah, well, I have a problem with that. And it turns out he'll have a family, kids. And cash flow. You don't have any." "Yeah, my husband provides for us." "So, you think it's better to stay with your husband?" "But Michael even introduced me to his parents." Here, the astrologer couldn't help herself, and with barely concealed irony, asked when he introduced me to his parents. "You told them how old you are, didn't you? And that you are married and have 3 children." My wife immediately weighed in. "You have no right to judge me. What am I paying you money for? Just tell me who I should stay with. I have no right to make those decisions. Just saying you're not going to have any more kids or cash flow. It's your right to decide." She said something else, changing the subject. She talked about children, about mental health, about karmic debts. Sometimes the man felt like he was watching from the sidelines. Sighing, he examined himself critically, belly, loose, unshaven. Well, yes, and there's a young and trim body. How to hold back, especially when her husband has been away for months, only transferring money? He closed the file and looked at the date of creation. A month ago. So my wife made the decision. Logically, why take the risk when there is a stupid, naive husband? And it's not like Michael's actually getting married. He dialed his wife. Mila didn't pick up for a long time, and when she did, her voice was agitated. He had not paid attention to all sorts of little things before, sometimes unavailable, sometimes not picking up, sometimes dropping the phone. She had work, kids. And now the puzzles are coming together. What's up? I'm a little busy. The kids are out visiting. I thought I'd take a bath. How's the laptop? Done. Get my stuff together. My parents are picking it up tomorrow. I'll file for divorce myself. Thanks for everything. I'll talk to the kids later. What happened? Jackson. Nothing. You cheated on me. Got another girl. Mila's tone was becoming hysterical. She didn't want to believe what he was saying. Hello to Michael. Long silence. And then the woman began to speak, mixing up her words, stammering and frightened more and more. You've got it all wrong. I don't know who and what told you, but only to make us quarrel. I love you more than life. And this guy is just an acquaintance from work. You know, there were some jealous people who saw us once in town and told lies. And he and I met by chance. She babbled something else, but he hung up. The screen lit up and voicemails came in, his wife called, wrote something. When the kids started calling, he answered them dryly that mom had another one and it was better this way. Maybe he shouldn't have let them in on such sordid details at all, but there was no strength to keep silent. Several months passed. The court gave 3 months to reconcile, but Jackson didn't care. He didn't care about the stamp in his passport. He moved back into his apartment, called his kids. Despite his hatred for his ex-wife, his love for his children remained unchanged. The woman didn't file for child support, knowing full well she'd get more that way. They discussed the matter and agreed on a fixed amount. Every time taking the children to visit, he stumbled upon her wild desire to talk, to discuss something and make peace. His hatred for her gradually turned into indifference. Now he didn't care about this woman. Subscribe, like, and always know there's a new story. Thank you. Good luck, everyone.